Foundations are crucial. They are necessary. Houses fall without them. But we set them and then they almost disappear. If we're the foundation, if the elders are the foundation, what are we building on that? What are we helping the next generation build on that, and the next generation to build on that?
I really can't agree with Zina more, and I'm just going to shift the language a little bit. One of the things we say in doing any of this work is you're working from the inside out. Because if you don't work from the inside out, your work is not going to be nearly as effective.
This is a time of transition in America. For those of us working in city building and community development, this is a moment to be daring, to dream big, and speak the future we want into being. Our cities have talent and ideas. That's not the issue. The question is whether we will listen. We invited some great minds across cities to hear what they're thinking about their own work in this moment and how they're building what comes next. Reverend Dr. Zina Jacque, beloved pastor and beacon for inclusion and belonging in her community outside of Chicago. Her work in theology and education has taken her coast to coast, from Boston to Oakland and back to the Midwest, where she co-founded Courageous Community to introduce conversations across difference. Zina, welcome to the Consulate.
Thank you so much.
And Eileen Cooper-Reed, esteemed social justice leader in Cincinnati. She has worn many hats: lawyer, social worker, family advocate, school board leader, equity champion, and convener, and mentor to so many in building more just communities. Eileen, welcome to the Consulate.
I'm so happy to be here, Orlando.
I'm so happy that I finally have the opportunity to talk to Zina and Eileen. It's been a long time coming. It's been a couple years now. So welcome. I'm so excited to have you both with us. You know, we've had a tumultuous time these last few months, and we're now in 2021. And my first question, you know, right out the gate is, where are we finding you right now in this space of city building? You know what I mean? Like, how would you describe your place right now within the space of city building? Eileen, let's start with you.
Let me say that I am continuing to see how my role needs to shift, you know, to meet the needs of what's going on in Cincinnati. I think change is made where you are, you know, so I don't look to Washington to places. I look here and I focus here, because if change is here, it's national change that happens to be in Cincinnati, you know, so really trying to focus on what are the ways that we want to change in Cincinnati and what is my role in doing that. So that shifts from time to time, you know, but right now I'm engaging in both my professional life as well as my personal life. Well, you know, it's about kind of who you are. So what they call volunteerism, I call citizenship. And so it's trying to be a good citizen and to use my gifts in the way that might best effectuate change in Cincinnati to be more equitable.
I love it.
And a more equitable community.
Zina, where do we find you in this space of city building in this very moment?
Currently, I serve in a community north of Chicago, northwest of Chicago, that is predominantly white. And I serve a church that is 100% white other than me.
Wow.
And my 14th anniversary is in 10 days.
Oh, congratulations.
Why, thank you. Yeah. I have been in this community and I did not want to come. Let me be really clear. I told God in no uncertain terms, you got the wrong one on the wrong day. This is not my work. These are not my people. Absolutely not. And with clarion ability, God said, you told me you'd go where I sent you, right? So here I am. But I want to paint a little picture. I live in an older home, and the doors don't always stand open. the house is shifted, right? So I have these little plastic wedges that stick under some of my doors to hold them open. And if you're not looking for them, you don't even see them, right? They're small, they're almost clear, pretty opaque, but they hold the doors open. They let the light in, they let passage occur. Orlando, I think the role I'm playing now in my community is a wedge. But I mean that in the way that these wedges are under my door. I've been there long enough that I have some capacity to enter in and out of places and be received. And so my role right now is holding open doors, doors that gravity would force shut, doors that shifting foundations would let slam. But if I can find a way to like slip under and hold it open, then conversation and dialogue have a greater chance. So, when you think of wedge, it's not always positive, and I want to reclaim it. I want to say that we can stick ourselves in spaces and create openings without blowing it up, maybe even without being noticed. But the effect is noticed because the openness remains. So, I sort of feel like the wedge under the door leading into my office. I'm holding things open.
Eileen, you look like you had a response to that. Go for it.
Well, not necessarily a response, perhaps just a nuanced modification, addition, actually, and that is the wedge to create connection, because that's what came to my mind when she said that. So for me, the work is because we have a certain probably reputation in our communities, we're able to help people connect in a way that they might not have before, and or different people to connect who may never have connected otherwise. So it's to help to make the connections in the community building process, as well as to I think provide the space for the courageous conversations that we both engage in, and that is convening courageous conversations so that people can talk about the things that are important to them, the things that other people won't talk about, and to provide a space for them that is, I don't call it a safe space, I call it safe enough space.
That's it. I like that. Orlando, I want to connect something Eileen said. First of all, Eileen has been one of the best teachers I've ever had. So I am just tickled to be in this conversation. But beyond that, one of the questions you teed up for us was, what's the calling, our calling in this work?
Yes. Yeah.
And Eileen just hit it. A very good friend of mine who's a pastor in Philadelphia, African-American man, boy, has more degrees than I have shoes, and he's brilliant. He's brilliant. MBA from Wharton. I mean, his name is Cedric Jones. Look the brother up. He's amazing. But we have this kind of ongoing sparring, because Cedric, in his own way, is an agitator. He gets in there and pushes. He just wrote something to our denomination not long ago, really pushing people's buttons, pushing people's agendas, pushing the envelope. Brother pushes, agitator. And we had this conversation because I am not. And the sort of topology that rose up for me was, you need agitators, bridge builders, and peacemakers.
Say that. Everybody got a role.
If you just, everybody's got a role. And I'm sure there are more than these three. I'm not saying this is the end all be all, but you need somebody who's going to stir the pot. I need Cedric. I need Reverend Jones. I need the one who's gonna bring our awareness forward. And in the end, remember that the Hebrew underneath peace is shalom. And it's not just the cessation of difficulty. The shalom builders, the shalom makers, there's enough, there's prosperity, there is safety, there is space for everybody to move. So you need that. But in the middle, between them, you've got to have this, as Eileen just said, the person who makes the space, the bridge builder, the person who connects. And that is the role I believe is in me.
Yeah.
Vocare, call, vocation, that is what I'm called to. And I need my partners so that we have the complete work underway. Because agitators will just blow stuff up. Peacemakers will just like smooth it over.
Right.
Bridge builders are trying to connect folks who don't like each other. It doesn't work. We need to be in there together. So when Eileen talks about making connections, that's it for me. I think that's the call that I have, to be a bridge builder.
And, having a healthy respect for roles that aren't yours, right?
Yes.
Not disparaging someone else's role because it's not your role, but, figuring out it's this question of strategy that we're probably going to talk about a little bit later around how all of these roles cross-pollinate to create and effectuate change in the communities. Eileen, you were going to say something.
Only that, when I was younger, I thought I was going to do all of them. That's what young people do, right? And then as you mature and you have different experiences, I think you shift, And so once again, as I said before, it's really about understanding what my gifts are at this moment in time, and how best to use them, and then how to trust other people to use theirs rather than thinking that there needs to be some direction. People know what's important to them, and so it really is about, fashioning your stuff, because you're the only thing that you can control, period.
Church is in session already. I love what you said. Trust other people to use their own gifts. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
That requires, a tremendous amount of groundwork and connection and relationship building to trust people to do their role. I want to switch gears just a little bit. I mean, wow, this conversation is already it's taking me places. But I want to ask you about your dreams, specifically your dreams for your city and your community. What is a dream you have for the future of your city and community? Zina, we'll start with you.
The thing that comes immediately to mind, and I can't help it, I think in scripture, so just forgive me. There's this thing that Jesus says, and a child shall lead them.
Yeah.
And I am watching in the town where I work, the voices of elementary school kids, middle school, and particularly high school kids rise up, both asking questions and making statements. The questions are, why do we operate like this? What causes you to be afraid? I've watched the 16-year-old ask her mom. The 16-year-old was behind a young Euro-American woman behind the organization of a Black Lives Matter rally in this town. And it rankled some folks. And with innocence, she said, why is this fearful for you that other people's lives would matter? So one of my dreams is that we would listen to the children because there is a way in which their digital native citizenship has caused them to be wiser world citizens than any of us who did not grow up, on a jet plane traveling the world. They have an understanding that is innate, that at 64 years of age is just not the understanding I came of age with. And I say listen to the children because they are dreaming their own future. They don't need us to dream it for them. There's a point when we stand back and make sure they have the tools. And it's coming sooner rather than later. So the dream is for this world where the questions do not raise fear, where the gatherings create new solutions, and where those of us who have a lot of this listen to those who don't.
But that a lot of this is sharp. Y'all wearing that a lot of this. I like how y'all wearing that. Eileen, what do you dream about?
Oh, Orlando and Zina, I have 17 grandchildren.
Oh,
Six
I only
children.
have three.
We, we'll put them together, then we'll have 20. How about that? Um, and I met Zina when I was working for the Children's Defense Fund 25 years ago, I guess. And so children, when she brings up children, my heart goes automatically there because working for the Children's Defense Fund and doing work and understanding the centrality of the well-being of children to community as a measure of how good your community is was always at the forefront, right? And so my dream is for all the children in the community to thrive, because if they're thriving, the community's thriving. That's what my dream is.
I love it. And I love what you both are saying essentially around, letting go. I work in community development in Detroit, and most of the folks that show up to, community gatherings where we talk about planning and advocacy and policy are older folks. And I often sort of push back on them, sometimes respectfully, around some letting go of that nostalgia that young people do not have. Young people don't have a nostalgia for what was. They have this brain, this launching pad to dream bigger than what we could ever imagine without all of our baggage and history and nostalgia and what was. And so my pushback is often, we don't want to build communities for old folks, because what the young folks are going to do, we want to build communities for everybody, and let's be intentional around highlighting that voice for young people. Wow.
Orlando, if Ken, I'm sitting at my dining room table, and we try to have Sunday dinners with my daughter, her significant other, and my 26-year-old grandson, whom I adore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell another story about him later. But the way these Sunday dinners occurred is we had a death in our family, and we realized we needed to gather together more frequently and pass on, or pass between us, wisdom and knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So sitting at this table, just not 2 feet from me one night, this young man said, "Grandma Z, you're a foundation stone for me." And of course, my chest just, But think about it. When was the last time you thought about the foundation of the building you live in? When was the last time you looked at it? Foundations are crucial. They are necessary. Houses fall without them. But we set them, and then they almost disappear. Now, if they crack or need, maintenance, yes, we rush to that. But if we are really foundations, we are not the central piece. We're not what the world sees any longer. We're the thing, we're the space that it all sits on. And when he called me that, it reminded me that I'm not going to be the most visible aspect. I'm necessary, but I'm not sufficient. And so what are we building on? If we're the foundation, if the elders are the foundation, what are we building on that? What are we helping the next generation build on that, and the next generation to build on that? So I like being a foundation, as I understand that it is not the most visible or central piece.
Go for it.
Go on.
No, please.
And nor should it be. And I think that one of the questions, I was in a class on Sunday, and one of the younger people, which in this instance would have included you, Zina, for me, was, tell me the difference between an elder and an older.
Oh,
and one of the things I learned, I think, about eldership, which resonated with me, is that it is actually the young people who pick the elders in their villages, and that's because they will go to whom they look to for to ask questions and to have conversation that's meaningful. But that isn't every person just because of age. That really has to do with, I think, the reciprocity of the appreciation of the stages that we're in. so that elders appreciate young people appreciate elders, because we offer each other something that is necessary, to the thriving of the village.
Amen. Amen.
I want to ask about. I love the dreams that you both outlined around amplifying young people, listening to young people, and Zina, your analogy of being the foundation and really not being visible but being a central piece to that. I want to ask a more practical question around how are you building toward seeing that dream come to life? What are you doing now to actualize that dream?
Orlando, you mentioned courageous conversations, courageous communities. This project we have going in Barrington, Illinois. We're in month 18. We don't know when the end will be, and it is now virtual space, but was in-person space, where we bring together thought leaders who teach us, one, how to have courageous conversations and be in courageous community, and two, bring topics up that let us practice doing that. One of the things that I think has that I learned in one of our sessions was one of our presenters said, "Your net worth is your net work." That your net worth is your net work. And he challenged us in every setting to think of those networks and imagine who's missing. Imagine the voices that aren't heard. Imagine the conversations that feel too tender to bring up. Imagine the topics, the places where we're just fearful, where we won't go. Imagine the voices that speak too much and speak too little. And then ask questions about what would happen if all of that was turned on its side. He talked about sitting on boards. And if you sit on a board and there are no people of color or transgendered people, if there are no women, whoever's missing, challenge that board that you'll only stay if that begins to shift. Network, net worth. So one of the things that I try to do is enter any space and pay attention to who's there, who's not there, what's being discussed, what's not being discussed, and where civility trumps truth.
Ooh.
And challenge civility, because civility isn't going to get us anywhere in the end.
That's
Truth
a trigger for me.
will.
Yes. Come on, Reverend Zina. Yes.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Because that civility is often used as a weapon to silence necessary dissent, necessary truth. And, to be quite candid, Black folk in America, we have, I think Dr. Andre Perry said it yesterday, this righteous anger. And we have the right to be angry. You have the right to express it. But civility is often forced on us when we show up in public spaces because it's disruptive and it's not polite, but we have to allow truth to trump civility. Thank you for that.
So I told you, I think it's scripture. The word of God says, be angry and sin not.
Yeah.
So, sin, be real clear. Sin means missing the mark. That's what it means. Think target and bow and arrow. Sin is when your arrow misses the mark. So to be angry and to sin not, I could miss the mark by being too quiet. Mm-hmm. So how do we channel? Anger is nothing but energy. How do we channel it so that it becomes, as you said, righteous anger? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Eileen, how are you building toward, seeing your dream actualized?
After I left the school board and where my work was focused, I tried to see where I needed to go next, because that's what I do. What's going on in my community? Where can I use the gifts, as I said before? And so a group of us went to LA to go to the Policy Link conference. And for any of you who know the policy link, they are all about equity. And so we came back. First of all, the conference itself looked like America, which is probably the only conference that I've ever been to that looked like America. I mean, everybody in the United States was represented in some form or fashion at the conference. And that was so inspiring and so exciting. And so the group of us came back and said, how do we then make Cincinnati an equitable community? And so that's where I knew I belonged at that point in time. And so I was actually asked to facilitate the process of how this work would end up being developed in Cincinnati. And so we ended up in a coalition called the All In Coalition. And it does policy work primarily. But in policy work, not just in one policy area, but it realizes the intersection of policies and how they affect the people in the community. And so it's probably the only place in this community where people talk about all those places where inequity exists and what we might do about them, and how one area might affect another area, and therefore, what do we do about it? But in addition to doing the policy work around health, education, criminal justice, there are two more, housing, and one more. So there are 5 areas. So we do work in all 5 of those policy areas. But in addition to doing that, we're about to be trained in the work of racial healing, which was something developed by Dr. Gail Christopher, where we were talking about it with Zina a little bit earlier. She is an absolutely wonderful, wonderful, wonderful woman who used to be vice president of the Kellogg Foundation and developed the process of racial healing and now trains people in it, because we realize that there's a need to do this work in community. So professionally, I do it in organizations. But that's not enough, because people will say about Cincinnati, for instance, if your schools were better, your community would be better. And I said, if our community was better, our schools would be better. So really, it is about the work that you're doing in community to build an equitable neighborhoods, equitable development, equitable school systems. That's the work that needs to be done, and helping to convene people and let them work in the area in which they feel is the most important is, for me, where the work that I'm doing right now.
I want to ask about, how you both think about strategy and approach to your work, specifically toward achieving or actualizing the dreams and visions that you laid out. We talked a little bit earlier around the different roles and having a healthy respect for roles that differ for yours, but figuring out how to cross-pollinate in strategy to move the needle, or to get rid of the whole meter period and not move the needle, but just have like real change. Like, forget moving the needle, let's just get rid, but so I want to ask you, Zina, about, how do you think about strategy to actualize change?
My doctorate is in an area called practical theology, and people always wonder what that means. Practical is this, that nothing happens unless it draws or rises out of experience. So you don't read a philosophy, or you don't see what's going on someplace else. You stop and you pay attention to the experience that people are having, right? As Eileen said, change happens where you are. And so I think in order to gather energy, you have to find out what people are experiencing and what that means to them. There's language of what's the pain point.
Yeah.
Because people change most often, not when they see some lofty goal, but when they're in pain. I wish it were otherwise. So what's the pain point? What's the thing that people are interested in galvanizing around? And then what is it? Because someone will say that I can't get a job. But it's more than that. You can't get a job because you have a felony, and our culture looks at you in a particular way and places you in a category. And so you can't get a job because of these cultural mores. So you have to find the pain point and you have to go below it to try and understand what the systemic issue is. And then you begin to gather so in practical theology, you have the experience, you gather the data, you then test it by the resources. And the resources might be in academia, but more often they're still in the community. And then you begin to build a strategy. So strategy is the third or fourth step after this sort of understanding of what's really going on. And what's most important to me about strategy is that you are working toward a goal that is meaningful for the group of people with which you are working, with whom you are working. And so so what that means is you are often beginning with a remnant. You're not often beginning with the whole community, but that's okay as well. Because if you've got a small or a group that is dedicated to moving forward, you will make progress. And along the way, you will gather some will go away, but as long as your nucleus is still really focused on moving forward on that topic that you've unearthed, that the experience has uncovered. And the other thing that I would say about strategy is I had parents born in the 20s, raised in Mississippi. And my mom talked, and my dad as well, talked often about the difference in long time and deep time. So long time is like the growing season. You can't make an ear of corn do anything it doesn't want to do. And so you have to wait. You are not in charge of that harvest, but you know at the end that corn will feed your fill in the blank. And so you operate recognizing that there is an end, but it is one that you are participating toward. You are not controlling it. Yes. And deep time is really time that is spent with you. Eileen said it earlier, you only control you. That deep time is when you go in and you're understanding yourself. So she always said, don't head out for a long time until you've done your deep time. And I think that's part of strategy too. We can be gadflies. We can be too quick and not doing our own deep time. And then we can be mad at long time. Final thing, I understand the fierce urgency of now. I really do. And so when you start talking about long time, you have to be careful that it's balanced so that you don't use long time to say, well, it'll be the next generation. You do your part with the fierce urgency of now in you, still recognizing that you're not in control of all the details.
Right. Eileen, what about you? Strategy.
You know, I really can't agree with Zina more, and I'm just going to shift the language a little bit. One of the things we say in doing any of this work is you're working from the inside out. Because if you don't work from the inside out, your work is not going to be nearly as effective.
Say it.
You know, so we have organizations who come and say, we're going to, funders in particular, who will perhaps go and say, we're going to make everybody that we fund take equity training. And I say, have you taken yours? What are you doing? And almost never have they. They just have sat in a room somewhere, decided that was needed, and then done it. So that's the importance of really, really understanding strategy, is that you have to know where you are. You have to know where you are. You have to know what work do I need to do either before I go out or as I go out, because that work is constant as well. You know, so, but at some point in time, and you won't be doing this by yourself. So as she said, you find other people who have the same sense of justice and moving forward, or wanting justice, or wanting to embrace it and wanting to embrace equity. And you gather with them, because none of this can be done by ourselves. And that's another mistake that we sometimes make, is to think that we're actually doing this. We just need to figure out how we're contributing to it. So, but it is necessary, I think, that you do some kind of assessment that says, where are we? Where are we now? If we can agree on kind of where we are now, then we can talk about where we want to go. Yeah. And once we do that, then the strategies are, how are we going to get there? And those are, and for me, it's actually not that difficult a process to think that way. In fact, it's not hard at all. Where are we now? Where we want to be? How do we get there? Strategies is how we get there. And it has to be informed by people who have had that experience.
Talk about
If
it.
it is not, if it is not, then it is not going to be as useful. It's always been people sitting in rooms saying, those parents need to do this, and these schools need to do that. And my question is, do you send your children to those schools? Well, then guess what? Why don't we just ask the parents who do what it is they need? And that'll give us the strategies that we need to develop. And so the importance of that experience that Zina talks about cannot be understated. The people know what they need better than anybody else. People know what they need. You just have to ask them.
Okay.
And so often we do not ask them what they need. We tell them what they need. So in terms of developing strategies, it is necessary that you do all of those things. That you know where you are, that you include people who are having the experience, and that they take some leadership in the strategies.
Yes.
They take some leadership in the strategies. You support that because they know it's important to them.
I mean, it's not rocket science, right?
No.
It's not
One of
rocket
my-
science. But it's
One
so
of my
hard for
mentors-
people to grasp, especially, folks who live in dominance, folks who are, within the power structure. It's so difficult sometimes for them to grasp that folks who live on the margins are actually experts in their experience and
That's
should
right.
be the drivers for how to effectuate that change. We've had a crazy year, and I think we all went to school within this last year. You all have been doing this work for a long time, but I am inclined to believe that, very recently, that you all have learned some lessons. That there are some lessons that you learned that this time has brought about. And I want to hear from both of you around, one of the greatest lessons you've learned recently, and how are you applying that learning? Eileen, we could start with you.
I think there are a couple things. Number one is it's actually reminded me that grief is communal. That we're all experiencing.
Can we just
it either
pause there? Wait, I'm sorry. Can we just pause there? Can you say that again, and let's just let it breathe for a minute? Wow.
Grief is communal.
Yes. And we've been robbed of that. But please continue. Wow.
Yeah, but we can make it happen. So and it is really those of us who understand that who need to help it to happen.
Yeah.
Because we know it, if nothing else. And we know that doing it by yourself is not really going to change much of anything. So it might make you feel better, but it even might not. But in history, grief is communal. And the woundedness that we experience has to be identified in order to be healed. It just has to be identified in order to be healed. So and then when you made me pause, Orlando, when you get to be my age, the rest of the question might slip away. So and I am not at all embarrassed to say that.
No, you answered it.
All right.
Sorry,
good.
it was just so powerful, and I really felt like that it needed to breathe just a little bit. It was such a powerful statement. Zina, one of the greatest lessons you've learned recently, how are you applying that learning?
That scars are badges of honor. That scars only form on living things. And the scar means I've survived. The scar means my community survived. The scar means that my the body politic, the body was strong enough to withstand the wound, because the wound looked terminal, but it was not. And now there's this place on the body that is marked, but that it is marked in a way that shows we can go forward. We've been wounded in countless ways, but we have found ways together as community to remove the irritant, to wash out the wound, to salve it. And now the work is underneath and almost invisible, but we'll be left with something that shows we can do this. I've watched it over and over. I've watched it in small children who have come back to school after having lost so much. I've watched it in families that have lost loved ones to COVID. I've watched it in families who saw Confederate flags in our nation's capital and refused to let that wound be fatal. So I've learned that we can hold up our scars and go forward, because we are alive, that we are in the process of healing, and there's more work to be done.
Reverend Zina, what gives you hope?
The people in the streets this summer, the conversations that continue, and the secret conversations. I live in this community where I have a whole lot of folk calling me who aren't quite sure they can come out in the light and admit what is going on, but they're wondering and they're questioning. And how many of us are available? Really quick story, a congregant of mine made an appointment and came mad, not angry, mad, and said to me, "You won't forgive me for voting for Trump the first time." And I thought, I'm not even sure I knew you did that. But she felt like this stain, and she wanted to be in the dialogue, but didn't think she could enter. So that was like a Nicodemus at night conversation, but it opened the door. And so how many of us can hold our faces straight and be in those Nicodemus at night conversations that again become sort of wedges and open spaces for people to come? Those give me hope.
Eileen, what gives you hope?
Young people. Once again, just, and when I say young, I'm talking about 40 on down. Young people give me hope, because the ones that I talk to are so caring and so not egotistical and so wanting justice and just so smart. My grandchildren, just learning from them, and letting them take me places where I forget to go, So young people are what give me hope, because it's their turn. As we said, it's their turn, and they're using their gifts in ways that I couldn't have even imagined. So supporting that is what gives me hope, because it's their turn, and they are the ones who are going to make the difference in this next time.
Sounds like you just described Orlando.
There you go. There you go. Well, Orlando and all of his buddies, right?
Right.
Right.
I am honored. Eileen Cooper Reed out of Cincinnati and Reverend Dr. Zina Jacque out of Barrington, Illinois. Thank you for joining the Consulate.